Hello my loves, I'm Ellie Frost and this channel is about the multi-dimensional approach to rapidly and radically healing and transforming during and after narcissistic abuse. And this video is about how the narcissist is not a match to your authentic self, right? So what does this mean? One of the biggest issues in the narcissistic abuse cycle is that we lose ourselves. We lose our identity, we get eroded on our self-esteem, our confidence, our boundaries, our values, the whole thing, right? So we completely self-abandon, yeah? You become who the narcissist needs you to be rather than who you really are, yeah? I remember saying, like, I was with my ex and I remember saying to him, you don't even like me, who I am. Like, he was always molding me and shaping me into what he wanted me to be, and the things that really made me me, like the things I was passionate about, my work, like things that I loved, he didn't really love about me. I really noticed how, it was the things that I thought were so essential to me as an individual that he really just had no interest in. He was interested in shaping me, molding me, manipulating me, controlling me into what he needed me to be, right? And the problem with this cycle is that we self-abandon, yeah? And trauma happens when we self-abandon, when we're not our true selves, when we're betraying ourselves, right? When we're separating out from our true identity, our true values, our true boundaries, our true self, right? So the more authentic we are in ourselves, right, the less we people please, the less we fawn, the less we adapt and, try and accommodate everyone around us at the expense of our needs, wants and desires, yeah? The stronger we are in that, the more confident we'll become in that, the less we're a match for a narcissist. So it's really important to just take time to think about what are your values, what are your standards, what are your boundaries, right? To notice where in relationships you lose yourself. Yeah, you become what someone else needs you to be. People pleasing and fawning is a key thing for this, right? We start doing what we think we need to do to please others and stay safe rather than what's true to us, yeah? And sometimes we've never been that true to us. Sometimes we might never have actually stood in our true power and in our true essence and really known who we are, right? So the first step to healing this is to come home, is to self-partner, what I call self-partnering, which is being true to me without judgment, yeah? So like, what does that look like? How does that show up? It means that, like, I don't say yes when I need to say no. It means I follow my gut and my instincts. It means I parent myself. It means I've got a mama papa bear inside of me that looks out for the inner child that's getting hurt and wounded in these relationships, and I learn how to say no. Yeah, really powerful no. No is a very powerful word, and some of us have a real problem. I know I did for years saying no. I would get swept up in things, and like what I teach people a lot is just to pause and think. Like I have to really train myself still to say, let me think about that rather than rush in, because the narcissist will always rush a relationship, will always like bombard you. The love bombing stage is like they want to get you hooked fast. They want to get you, they will play a long game if they need to, by the way, though, so it's not always fast. They'll play the long game, and a lot of times people get confused and say, well, I thought that person really liked me because they chased me for a long time. Yeah, they're just predators. But generally, they'll try and rush the relationship. Generally, you'll find that they'll introduce you to like family and friends really, really fast. They'll use we language a lot. Like before you're even like a couple, they'll generally try and rush you into something before you've had time to think. And if you're a people pleaser and someone who likes to accommodate others, an empath, I am, like we want to make other people happy, like we can actually start self-abandoning. So we've really, the key to this is like staying in touch with yourself, keeping hold of yourself, taking time in relationships, not rushing things, actually like coming home and like really like being like, not many of us actually in our day-to-day life actually think about like, how do I feel about this? Take a minute to think, how do I feel about this? Really important phrase, let me think about that. I used to say yes to so many things that I didn't want to do because I would just like get caught up in it. And I also had like quite low standards and boundaries. And I'd been trained by narcissists. I grew up in a narcissistic home. So I was trained to accommodate others, right? Be what they needed me to be. And that's a survival instinct to stay safe, right? Because with our parents, we have to be loved by our parents to get fed, have food, have water, have shelter. So it's a survival instinct to do what when we're in a dynamic that we think to stay safe, we've got to please the other person. And it's not about not pleasing the other person, because in relationships we want to make people happy. That's part of the beauty of life. But it is about not at the expense and sacrifice of ourselves, right? And what's the expense and sacrifice of ourselves is when we cross our own boundaries. That always feels bad. Yeah, when you know you've done something that isn't quite true to you, that is against your own value set. The narcissist is constantly eroding you and pushing your boundaries and eroding your values. Why? Because it makes you lose self-esteem. Yeah, we don't trust ourselves to be able to look after ourselves and to actually stand by what we believe in and be who we are, right? So we become what the narcissist needs us to be. And then we get these awful subconscious programs in our head that we don't really matter and we don't really exist in our own right? Because we're just literally a supply source to the narcissist, worrying all the time about what they're going to do next. Are they happy? Walking on eggshells. You know what I mean? Although I do believe grey walk and stonewalling are great strategies to help you manage this dynamic in the short term, yeah, no one wants to live like that. We want to be loved for who we are. We want to be loved for our true essence, our passions, our joy. The most wonderful thing when you fall in love with someone is learning about them and what they love and being part of what makes them happy and being inspired by them. But in this dynamic, everything that's kind of unique and true to you gets eroded and you just become like a servant, a supply source to the narcissist. And most of the dynamic will be worrying about what they are going to do next, or walking on eggshells and trying to keep them happy, trying to keep the peace, rather than being in joy, in love, in connection, right? In union, in actual true union. So it's really important to take time to when you're with people, think about how you feel about things. I used to say all the time, I don't mind. That was my thing, right? What do you want to go and see at the movies? I don't mind. Whatever you want. What do you want to have for dinner? I don't mind. Whatever you want. Because I was so trained to make other people happy. I didn't even know what I wanted, right? And so part of the healing journey is coming into ourselves and really forming a relationship. Self-parenting and self-partnering is all about coming into relationship with ourselves. It's really knowing what makes us happy, learning what makes us happy. We might not know that yet, right? Learning who we are and being willing to stand our ground, right? Get our needs met. I coach a lot of people on relationships, and sometimes I think when we've been through these cycles, we get kind of impatient with ourselves because we know our boundaries are being crossed sometimes and we want to speak up, but we just want the feeling to go away, right? But our emotions are messengers. Our boundaries are unique to us. You get to have a relationship that actually makes you happy, and it's unique to every individual. What you're happy with in a relationship needs to be honored, right? And people need to meet you halfway. So it's a reciprocal relationship, not just working for a narcissist. So the biggest thing about boundaries and silence is when we get that emotional knowledge, when we feel like our boundaries are being crossed, when we feel uncomfortable with something, is learning how to powerfully communicate with people so that they can actually meet our needs, right? So our needs get met, and knowing when something is toxic for us and unhealthy for us because we can't get our needs met there and our boundaries get to be crossed. So if you'd like to do more of this work, please come into Sovereign. That's my narcissistic abuse recovery program, but it's much more than that. It teaches you about manifestation, really identifying your values, standards and boundaries. It's lots of healing work in there, energy work in there, and it's a really good place to start, really coming home, really coming into your authentic truth and power, and that will give you your most abundant life, because we're only a match for our most abundant, happy, fulfilling life when we're being true to ourselves. When we're not being true to ourselves, when we've abandoned ourselves in this cycle, right, we're just a match for things that are are not true to ourselves, are true to almost the false self that we're being forced to be because it's not true to us. Yeah. So think about when people have made you say yes. Well, you felt like you have to say yes when you meant to say no. Think about how often you do that. Think about what it would take to actually be true to you and actually stand your ground. Have the mama papa bear inside of you, parenting you, and knowing when when you being confident enough not to do the things or to say no to things or to even exclude people from your life that you don't want there anymore. Think about how that would feel to you, to have the power, to have the confidence, right, to actually create your own life and create your own relationships rather than being pushed and pulled by what other people need you to be. Because actually you're more magnetic, you're more attractive to healthy people when you're really, really authentic. The most like magnetic people are the ones that are truest to themselves, because people trust those people, right? But you know, you're more trustworthy when you're being true and in integrity with yourself, right? People don't really trust people who are not being true to themselves, because they just will be whatever is sort of being presented to them. They'll just act around that, and it's not a very happy way to live. It always feels like our energy is being pulled, right? We're being pulled out of shape. So I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share and subscribe for the channel. I love you, and I'll speak to you soon.